Rocket Power, trademark. Race Across New Zealand, trademark. Was not a good movie. At least a 6 out of 10. Well, if Jim is going to make me review a cinematic piece of hot, flaming garbage that Rocket Power Race Across New Zealand was, I'm going to make him review something way worse. I permeate the cycle.
Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Kickassia. Thanks, Nolan. Now, this is the first feature-length Channel Awesome movie, or the Nostalgia Critic movie. This was made as a second-year anniversary of Channel Awesome, the first year being kind of a smaller video, thankfully, which was a crossover with the Angry Video Game Nerd, which they would do battle. And that was a big deal when it came out, and I knew people who wanted to see that. There was a pent-up demand for them to do kind of an epic crossover, though I think they'd done crossovers before, but it was like, anyway. Kickassia is sort of like that, except if like nobody wanted this necessarily. And the amount of people that this movie is for is so small and minute. I'd actually like to meet someone who knows literally all the people in this and got all the in-jokes and everything like that. Actually, I wouldn't, because that person is probably weird and I don't really want to know them, but I'm just curious how many people that actually is. Between Doug Walker being in this and all the illustrious people who were on Channel Awesome, there's so many in-jokes and crossover from other channels and other critics and everything like that. This isn't like the MCU where you have a few movie franchises and they build up to the Avengers or something, and maybe this is a tease to the disaster that Infinity War might be, but it just has too many characters in it to even sort of follow. I mean, you certainly have Nostalgia Chick and Linkara and the guy who clearly really likes the Punisher and Wolverine. I don't really know his name. You have them in this, and I get them. But then you have this guy Spoonie, I guess, and all these other characters who I don't even know who they are. And so you're just sitting there wondering, like, who watched every video that Channel Awesome put out and what was the real purpose of this? I mean, I think the idea is you got all these people together like it was the Avengers or like a big team-up movie and the fans would really demand it, but who really was watching all of this content? It's kind of like that YouTube year-end in review video that YouTubers get upset that they weren't in and go on and on about, and you're like, dude, I watched that once and barely gave a shit when it was on, but you know, this is your existential crisis, and this is like that, but like a movie. And the whole idea of this being a movie is strange because it's like nobody wanted this. And it used to be back in my day, you were a show or you were a thing and you got a movie, that used to mean something, you know? You used to have to earn that. You used to have to get up there and be so successful that they'd have to make a cinematic equivalent of your thing. Whether you be the Rugrats, Transformers, G.I. Joe, My Little Pony, the first time, not the new time. Hey Arnold, didn't work out well, but Powerpuff Girls, they were so popular, you demanded a movie. And there was a time where you had to earn it, where you had to work hard enough and be successful enough as a TV show to have a movie because people demanded it. Things used to mean something back in my day, and Kickassia makes me realize you don't really need to earn anything. You can just do this.
Everyone can be super, and when everyone's super, no one will be.
Okay, what was that?
It just felt like this will obviously work. People will want this. And I think while watching it, I sort of didn't really get that. I think one of the main problems with it is the whole plot of it, which is that Nostalgia Critic finds this small nation, one of those kind of people who has a micronation thing called Molassia, and he's going to come take it over, which is sort of unwarranted and unearned. I mean, has that been like referred to in the last year of Nostalgia Critic videos? And I totally missed that as someone who doesn't watch him regularly or anything. I've definitely seen his stuff, but I don't remember a Molassia thing. So you're sitting there watching this and you're like, okay, so I don't get like what that is. Is this like something he thought was really funny? The idea of people having micronations, which is like, I know was big on the internet in the early part of the decade, and come every now and then a news program will do a story on them, which is sort of interesting and funny and stuff, but I don't really understand why this one specifically, and I don't understand how getting them all together for this made any sort of sense. I think when you have certain shows that become movies, you give them a reason to be theatrical. Beavis and Butthead, for example, and Beavis and Butthead Do America lose their TV and have to go on an adventure over America. And certainly it's abstract and it is a little silly giving them a reason, but this movie shows you why you need that reason, because there is no reason to do this. There is no reason to attack Molassia, take it over, and make it become Kickassia. There's like no reason. There's no built up. If there was an intro saying like, I've always wondered about Molassia, and like showed him as a kid, and he always like tried to peer over the gate and they wouldn't let him, and now he has all this power through his YouTube channel and then he could do it, and I fixed your fucking first act. Holy shit, how did you not figure that out? That's narrative structure. But anyway, it's like you built it up. You didn't make me care about Molassia. You made me care about the journey to take over Molassia, but you needed the reason at the beginning, and this movie never gave that to me. And then once they do take over Molassia, they don't very much have a plot for a large chunk of it. They have like a newsreel thing, which is clearly a reference to the South Park movie, which is weird because I don't think any of them have ever seen a newsreel before. Doug Walker, the nostalgia critic, being this weird tyrannical leader, and you didn't think to do a news on the march joke. I mean, that's just like right there. But since you took one of the more recent and very well-known jokes on a newsreel thing and just sort of ripped off that voice and did that, it really was just an excuse to show what all the characters were doing in Kickassia, or an excuse to kill a lot of time, which was incredibly annoying to watch because it went on way too long. I mean, you can't just fill holes in movies and videos with a bunch of cameos and just hope it'll be funny and everyone will think it's really great.
Hey, it's me, Paleo.
I'm Jaxblade.
Hey, this is Corey.
And this is Rob.
From the Other Ends podcast.
Saber here.
Wait, what?
I mean, like, having cameos is fun and it's funny, and, you know, the person who asked people to do cameos should be really thankful that everyone did it, and they're all really nice people and really good friends to do this on very short notice and do a cameo in their video. But it doesn't necessarily make a video better. You have to have, like, a reason for those people being in there, and you can do certain little jokes in a video, and it can be, like, a little thing, and you can, in it, like, he has all these cameos of different people and his different personas, and acting like just those being there will make people laugh and they'll be okay with it because, like, hey, it's all these different people you know and cameos of all the other characters he does, I guess. You know, that's fine to do as a one-off joke thing. You can do that in a movie. You know, there's certain movies, like I love the opening of the third Austin Powers better than the rest of Austin Powers, but that's like a whole different thing. It's like people love that stuff to a certain extent, but you can't do that for like most of the movie. This whole idea of taking over Molassia doesn't make any sense, and watching it, you don't really even understand why you're supposed to care. And then the references they make in it, like, there's a lot of times they're referencing things to reference things, and I'm supposed to just think that reference is so fucking awesome that I'd love it. But there's sort of pathetic kind of suburban, I just go to Blockbuster and rent the new releases and the few movies I like kind of view of referencing. I mean, there's often times when I'm watching it where I was like, yes, that's a Star Wars reference. Yeah, that's a reference to this. But it's like the whole idea of Kickassia and the whole, like, their view of violence and things is like somebody who's like never been in a fight, never been punched, probably a virgin, never really had any sort of violence or very much hardship attributed to violence. It's like when you hear a kid go into detail about decapitation, you're like, so where do you live? In a nice, safe suburban neighborhood that's eating my soul. You know, as someone who actually has to deal with decapitation, and they probably don't want to go all in crazy detail about it. I like violence in media as well, but I understand, like, there's a point to it, and acting like an immature idiot who still has the views on violence and violence in the media as a 12-year-old is a little pathetic when you pass the age of, you know, 12. This feels like a bunch of people LARPing, but sort of better production value. I don't even really want to say that because it's people who don't really understand how to use their camera, and it's pretty clear because a lot of the footage was blown out that they shouldn't have been shooting outside during the daytime, which is the whole movie. Since Nolan has also made me sing Atop the Fourth Wall, he manages to do this to me a lot. Since Atop the Fourth Wall, the movie, is after this, what's interesting about that is they clearly got better by that point of making these movies, and that was mostly Inside, which I think was a better move for them because that footage looked a lot better. But also, like, Linkara makes it kind of connected to his little skits and things. So I guess if you're into Linkara, you would see it, but this feels like such a side tangent. It feels like kind of like a Marvel crossover or a big comic book crossover, but one that's just kind of like its own mini series and not one that's like connected to any of the things. You know, you'd usually have crossover issues and stuff and connect it so the fans would have to read it. I kind of don't get that from any of this. Like, I don't get the essentialness of it. I don't get, it feels very like side annual-y, but not one that connects in a way that, like, I'd read it for the fan service of it, and that's probably mainly what this is, very blatantly, but there's nothing else attributed to it. And it kind of shows the weakness of all of them, and that maybe all these people who want to review movies and various other things don't seem to know very much about how they're made or how to make them, and ended up, you know, making like a cringy, bad, terrible plotted film because they probably don't even really know much about it. I think it probably shows more of the weakness in their knowledge of film and knowledge of storytelling than anything. Also, the fact that you have a movie with a bunch of critics where no one reviews anything, which I certainly don't get, and that they felt they were all popular enough to facilitate a whole movie, and why he's dressed up as M. Bison, which also, you know, goes into the whole thing of this just feels like a huge ego trip of a thing. And certainly I get that Doug Walker has actually reviewed all of his movies, or at least a couple of them. I know he's reviewed this one, and he seems to have a good sense of humor about it, probably because he watched this and it was bad and he probably realized it was a mistake. I think while watching this film, I kind of saw the depths of the grossness of Channel Awesome. It felt like going to the dorky friend you have house who nobody really liked because they were annoying, and then you went down to their basement and realized, like, oh god, like, your whole house smells like you. I thought maybe like it was just because you didn't shower enough, but there's like this stench in the air that will never kind of come off of you, and will never come off of me now, and now I'm gonna have to shower all weekend to get this off. I think the problem with this Kickassia, and the problem with a lot of these movies, they're really just for fans who have an enormous amount of patience, who will put up with an endless amount of Channel Awesome's bullshit and Doug Walker's bullshit and put up with this movie. And I think it's like egotistical and a huge bunch of hubris, much like it was with the Atop the Fourth Wall movie, to demand that of your audience. You know, they're there, and why I watch Nostalgia Critic, and most people I know watch it, is to see reviews of movies. And this is acting like your persona is more important than that. Learn from Siskel and Ebert. Siskel and Ebert only did one kind of acting thing, which was the critic, because they understood that they needed to be within the movie thing, and they were not personas, they were critics. And Doug Walker and Channel Awesome never really understood that. They got too into being personas. They didn't understand why they are here. They are here to review things, and that's why we like them, and we don't really give a shit about showing how funny they are, or their attempts at humor, which were all bad and cringy. Oftentimes they would undercut what most people understood as jokes. Also, I didn't understand the Nostalgia Chicks thing with Sarah Palin, which both made me think she thought Sarah Palin was smarter than we thought she was, and was weird because this came out in 2010, which was 2 years after the whole Sarah Palin thing. This was a dated joke when you made it. Like, what's the point of it? Like, that felt weird. Sometimes they make reference and jokes to things. You're like, are people still doing that? And it's not just that people are still doing that. This isn't like funny. Like, what is this? Is this like your only frame of reference? Did you like not read the news for 2 years and you're like, hey, Sarah Palin was fun. Remember Sarah Palin? And they directly reference her several times. And it's like, it's clearly like she feels through her portrayal that Sarah Palin was smarter and we should give her more credit than we did. But I'm like, I don't necessarily agree. And I'm also like, where were you going with this? And there's a lot of jokes where it's like, oftentimes they're like, what if we did this? And it'd be a funny setup in a Looney Tunes thing, and they'll undercut it before it gets anywhere because they're too smart alecky and wisecracky. But it's like, that was insanely irritating. Like, it couldn't really get anywhere because they always had to like chime in and attack each other, and you're like, oh, because they're critics. And I'm like, yeah, but that itself wasn't a joke. That wasn't a self-awareness to it. It just felt like you just bring things up and go on side tangents that never really worked out. And there was a Hogan Heroes thing, and I don't really get the whole Santa Christ thing. That sounds like a dumb nerdy joke that like just does not really play to anyone. It's like, oh, that would be the greatest Christmas icon of all time. And that tangent didn't work, so he could have more stupid cameos that were like not that funny. But it's like, I guess for the people who are watching it would love to see, you know, the various fan service of having, you know, a ton of cameos in there randomly.
What?
I'm Jax Blade.
Saber here.
What?
Well, what?
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 which again, I'm sure he should be very thankful that anyone who would do cameos in his movie would do them, and it's really nice of them to do it on short notice and be, you know, really cool friends to do it. But I think Kickassia shows the lower depths and kind of the extent of Doug Walker, and I guess who directed this? Oh, Doug Walker. Never mind. I thought it was going to be someone else, but it's not. I think with the Angry Video Game Nerd, it sort of felt like something that was building towards and that the audience wanted it. It made a demand. And I think that's probably the best case scenario for a YouTube kind of movie, is make the audience want this sort of thing and feel this demand for it. And like the Avengers, you know, you felt this demand, like they did this, they did it, holy shit. And in Kickassia, it's more like, oh, they did this? Guess we're gonna have to clean this up. I'll get the mop. And that's kind of like why everyone mostly makes fun of this. I found more negative reviews than positive ones, and it's not to pick on the nostalgia critic necessarily. I mean, maybe that's why this was picked, I don't know. I think it's also because this is like really fucking bad, acting like this is going to bring more people, but it's really only exciting the fan base. It's like the other video he made previous to this, I understand how that got more people probably to Channel Awesome, and maybe it was record traffic or something. I don't really have any data on that, but I assume it was because people on the internet were like, holy shit, this happened. But in this, it's like, oh, holy shit, like they did not, this happened, but it's like they made the other thing but worse and longer. I think if you are a fan, I guess you're gonna see this anyway. I don't get most of these things, like why the guy was like various photos and then became like a real person or a real boy. The guy with like a stuffed animal, which that's a whole level of cringe. This is like a cringy YouTube movie, and that's sort of what it is. And if you're into this cringy YouTube or this cringy video platform website that was Channel Awesome, then I'm sure you'd like it. And this screams of people thinking that having all this together would be a good idea, but it's just too many people. If he had kept it to 4 or 5 or something, or maybe 10, that would have worked. But having an overcrowded hotel room full of YouTube people who were brought there mostly for exposure, which is a whole different kind of pathetic thing in business practices, which I could get into that also, which that's as cringy as really most of this movie is. This movie was a mistake. It was an epic mistake, and I hope no one ever has to sit through it. Damn you, Nolan, for making me watch this. It was fucking horrible. It was not good. I keep reading on reviews, it's like watching a bunch of little kids make a movie, and it felt like that, except they're grown adults, and really they should all know fucking better, especially because they've all reviewed things and probably told you not to do the various things that then they actually did when they made their actual movie to impress you and get you excited, and instead they ended up disappointing you and realizing how full of shit probably they all were. So if you have seen Kickassia and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to. And thank you again to everyone for doing cameos in this, from Pan Pizza to Izzy to Paleo, Saber Sparks, Jax Blade, Corey and Rob from Oh the Anthem, everybody. It was really great and really nice of you, and thank you all very much for doing this. It was really cool. And Nolan also. The next one is gonna be so much worse. You wait, 2018, it's coming.